You are listening to Here Before, Here Now, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.
Hey there, Colton here with another episode of Here Before, Here Now. I am really excited to bring to you my next guest, Arlyssa Becenti. She is an Indigenous Affairs reporter for the Arizona Republic. She's been covering the Navajo Nation for over 10 years, and she has been the recipient of many awards. Actually, here she is right now. Arlyssa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, yes. Hello. Yate, she Arlyssa Becenti nishe, not o the net touching initially, but any bashichin, killing the shiche aluki.
Isn't it interesting how, like, whenever we talk to another Navajo person, that's the first thing they say when they introduce themselves?
Yeah, it's like that even when I'm in a meeting. Like, they'll be like, everybody introduce yourself. And even though I'm working the meeting and covering the meeting, I stand up and I have to introduce myself because you just have to.
I forget sometimes when I'm talking to someone else and I just launch into the conversation. You might have heard this in my previous interviews. We're like, wait, can I introduce myself first?
Yeah. I've heard.
So I mean, it's one of those things where, like, gosh, it's like it's super important to us and how we introduce ourselves and identify each other to see if we're possibly related.
It's easier when I introduce myself to people that I'm interviewing because then they know, like, hey, we're related. You're my sister or you're my grandma. So it kind of just makes the conversation and the interview flow a little bit easier, and people are more like, okay, we're related. I can feel more at ease.
Exactly, just relax and all that stuff. So I honestly have been following your work for several years.
Likewise.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, it's good to hear that. I thought it was so cool to be able to see someone who is Navajo covering issues that are important to Native people on a medium that I don't really report for, and that's newspapers and online media. Tell me about your journey and how you decided to go into that.
Oh, goodness. There's no pivotal moment in my life where I knew I wanted to be a journalist. There was just different pockets. Like, my dad is a cowboy, and, like, he's a local superstar back when he was in the rodeo. And so obviously his articles were there, and I would read the paper just to see it. And I'd be like, wow, this is really interesting. And then he would go on and he'd be talking about Navajo Times, and he'd be talking about really amazing reporters like Marley Shabala, who is one of my heroes and who I got to work with. And he would say she's a very determined, her tenacity to get, the story out there and be the source of news for her people. It's incredible. And I would hear that stuff and I'd be like, that is something that's like an honor, I think, to be that kind of a person to get the news out. So that'd be one part. And then, I didn't know what I wanted to be in high school. I knew that I loved to read. I was very shy. I had hardly any friends. So reading was it for me. And my mother was a literature teacher at the local middle school. And every time I'd be like, Mom, I'm bored. She'd be like, read. So that was what, that's how I grew up. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I just remember thinking, I love reading. I love reading the newspaper. I love writing. So maybe this is something I should look into. And as I was in college, I remember starting off at Phoenix College. And I had a communications teacher there. And he was working for the Arizona Republic at that time. This was like 2007, 2008. And this is when Walter Cronkite was opening. And I was like, wow, I want to go to that school. When I'm done here, I want to apply there. And I told him, and he looked at me and he said, a lot of people want to apply, but not a lot are going to get in. And that to me at a young age, growing up, just thinking like, okay, if they're older and they're wiser, they know more than you. And so I'm thinking maybe he sees something in me that doesn't, kind of like shows I could be a journalist. So I'm not going to apply. So I didn't apply for Cronkite, but then I went to the main campus in Tempe and I went into English literature. And after that, I was like, I still want to be a reporter. How do I get there? How do I become a journalist? Because for me, my New York Times was Navajo Times. That was where I wanted to go. And I'm like, how do I get there? I don't know anybody. This is what I want to do. I know I want to at least try it. So one summer, I applied for an internship there. And I never got a call back. I got an interview, and I was so nervous, like how I feel right now. I'm kind of nervous. Like really nervous. My stomach's like in knots. But I never got a call back from the editor, who later on became my editor. And I was like, what's wrong with me? And I just, I left it at that. And then it was time to graduate from ASU, and luckily I made a good friend of a reporter at Gallup Independent in Gallup, New Mexico, the daily paper, and he was able to get me into Gallup Independent as an intern. And finally, my internship ended. I had graduated, and they said, "Okay, you can have a job, but you're going to have to cover Navajo politics."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I don't know anything about Navajo politics. I was born and raised in Fort Defiance. I had Navajo history, Navajo culture classes, but I did not know anything about our government. And I didn't want to do it. Council of Delegates, the Navajo Nation president, that's so intimidating to a young woman who has no idea about that, politics. And so I'm like, but I needed a job, and I said, okay. And so
why not? Right.
Yeah, I was like, I can learn. I wanted to write about arts and culture and entertainment.
Sure.
I remember that. And I can't imagine doing that now.
Too fluff for you.
Yeah, it really is.
Give me the meat.
Yeah, exactly. And so I remember hitting the ground running, and then I covered my first committee meeting, the Law and Order Committee meeting. And I remember them saying, okay, it's executive session. And I just remember sitting there like, okay, executive session. And they're like, you're going to have to leave. And that was the first time and I was just so embarrassed. And that's how I remembered what executive session was. And from then on, I just continued working. And sooner or later, it just became a passion to cover the government, the Navajo government specifically.
Yeah.
So that's where I am now still.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Like I had said at the beginning of this, I've been reading your work for years, and one of the things that I really enjoyed reading were your reporter notebook entries. Yeah, I mean, not only do you write really, really well, obviously you have like an English lit background, you read a lot growing up, but you're also very, I would say, transparent with the reporting process and where you stand on certain things or how you're feeling in a certain moment. How is it like to be that open with your readers? I mean, I read it and I'm sometimes like, wow, I don't think I could ever be this open with people,
Yeah. Wow. I don't know. I never really thought of that. Even on my Twitter page,
Yeah.
I'm very open and honest. And I just think it's something that readers need to know when it comes to someone who's giving them the news, just the transparency of their mindset and how they think about certain issues. I know, I want them to also know just how difficult it is to get that certain type of news. Like, a reporter's notebook that comes to mind is when me and Marley Shabala were almost thrown out.
I read that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're covering one of the council sessions, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not because we were almost thrown out. It was because at that point in time, what they were discussing on the floor and how people in the gallery were reacting to it, who were, behind this legislation that was being talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that was something that needed to be known in a different light rather than just saying, this council delegate said
this and that. Yeah, sure. It definitely gave context to what you're reporting on, and so that's why, I try to read those behind the scenes looks or, the other reporter notebooks that come out now. It's always curious and fascinating. I think before we tried to do something like that at a station that I worked with, we called it the backstory, and we would record a quick 2-minute video of back when phone videos were becoming a thing, right?
Yeah.
So just like, this is how we got the story. This is X, Y, and Z, how it all came to be. But like reading it on paper, there's something more intimate about that.
Yeah, I think so, because it's going to be there forever. I always like to go back to those reporters' notebooks so people can I know a recent one was about a online boutique of a woman that was selling apparel under the name of Navajo Nation Tea, Navajo Nation Extended. And I had to ask the AG, like, hey, can she do this? And she sent the cease and desist. And the reason why I brought that up was because of what was going on with, I believe it was a Dutch company using Nijone as their company name. And I thought that it went well with each other. And I just wanted to explain, we need to really start calling these type of things out, because it's been happening. It's been happening for a long time. And this is just another form of cultural appropriation, and it's something that needs to be stopped. So I use my old reporter's notebook on that online boutique to just kind of draw attention to that, what is going on now, the issue.
Yeah. And what's it like putting those out there? Like, do you feel like you'll get backlash or?
Oh, I know it will. I will.
I know you're not shy. I mean, you describe yourself as shy, but like when you put words down to like paper or something, it's, oh, you have definitely your own opinions and you really want people to know that you will fight for these.
Yeah, I always used to say this. I used to say I'm quiet until I feel like I need to say something out loud. Like, and that was, one of the reporter's notebooks that came to mind was that one at the council chamber. And I know at the beginning when I started putting my opinions out there like that, I was afraid of backlash and what people would say. But then as I got older and I felt like, okay, my opinion is valid because I'm the one that's seeing everything full circle, and I think it needs to be said as so. So I just left it at that, and now I really don't care about backlash. Actually, I just I put it out there. I got a really mean email the other day about a recent article, and I put it out there on Twitter. It's like, I knew this was going to happen.
Sure.
And so
it was about the eclipse.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I saw that. Here too, I had interviewed someone with the Phoenix Indian Center last week to talk about how different tribes observe the eclipse differently.
Oh, okay, I missed that.
Yeah. So it was an interesting thing because some of the talent here got emails from Native people who are living on the res, maybe not on the res, about how you should give a warning when you're going to be showing pictures of the eclipse. And the person asked me like, well, is this something I should be doing? I'm like, well, it's obviously it's in the news right now. It's a huge thing. I don't think you can give a warning every time you're going to bring up something with this. But I did say I'll make a story of it to, bring other people into this kind of awareness of how different tribes celebrate or I guess revere this moment.
Yeah, the whole picture thing, that wasn't my doing.
Sure. Right, exactly. Well, the thing with my story too, when I was interviewing her, there was like videos of the eclipse happening.
Exactly,
and then she like did her thing on Facebook, like, just a warning, this is with the images too, which I guess I probably could have said something also, but at the time I just wanted to talk to this person to get this information out there.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, you were going to say something.
Oh yeah. Like when I saw the article, I don't write about cultural things. I don't think it's my place to write. I'm a traditional person. That's how I was raised. But I don't feel like it's something that I should be writing about. Ceremonies, teachings, and everything like that. Because it varies. We're a very large tribe. There's people that have been taught different ways. It's not just one way. And so this time around, I was like, you know what? Everybody's writing about the eclipse and they're writing about it in a certain way. And I feel like maybe I should try. And so I did. I asked the experts and then I saw the article and it had all these pictures of the eclipse and I was like, what?
Sure.
So that's what happened. And I asked for them to take it down, but I don't think they took them all down.
Is it kind of hard to navigate, I guess, who you are and how you identify as a Dene woman and reporting on issues that affect Indian country?
Ooh, can you say that again?
I don't even know what I said. So as a Dene woman, how you identify, how does it affect the way you report on stories such as the eclipse or on Indian country?
Oh, goodness. It's hard for me not to get my heart into issues that are happening, especially when it comes to uranium cleanups or hydrogen or coal mining or, reclamation of any sort. I'm talking too fast. And so it's really hard for me not to try to get really emotionally involved. And, I have my own politics, I have my own views. And that opinion also does get in the way sometimes with my writing, and I have to make sure that it's balanced. But when it comes to culture, like I said, I don't write about culture. I don't write about ceremonies. I don't write about any of that stuff because I feel like that's already been, that's something that is sacred and that shouldn't be written about. And I'm kind of hypocritical right now because I wrote about the eclipse, but that's the first and last time I'm probably going to do that. And so it's very difficult the way I identify as a Dene woman, as well as my own politics and my own background, and trying to get a very balanced article. Sometimes it's really difficult.
Yeah, no, I can see that for sure. Do you feel like you've become like the ambassador of Native people in your newsroom or, in general as the Indigenous Affairs reporter?
I have a really great team member, Deb Kroll, and she is just amazing. If anyone's an ambassador of Native news in our newsroom, it's her.
I love Deb. I see her all the time. I always at a powwow, at a market. I mean, like she's always coming up to me. I'm like, hey Deb, we gotta get coffee. Yeah, definitely.
I should wear her earrings because she's a really great jewelry maker. Yeah. And she made me some really pretty earrings. I should have worn those today. But no, she's the ambassador, and she's the one that actually got me on. Got me on board here because, you know, I was getting my master's at Cronkite. I finally got into Cronkite after over 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was just like, I want to go to grad school. It was 2020, the pandemic, and that was a big news year for me. I covered COVID. Our little team at Navajo Times covered COVID, and then I covered the illegal hemp farm in Shiprock, and I got a investigative journalism award from Arizona Press Club with that. And then I covered uranium cleanup, and I got an environmental award for that too. And I was like, I need to do something more than this. And I kind of wanted to be an editor at Navajo Times. I wanted to be the editor there, but I've never tried ever being an editor, and they never trained me. And so I didn't get the job, obviously. And so I applied for grad school, and I became a Roy Howard Fellow, and I was just so astonished that they even chose me.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, with your body of work, you're definitely deserved for it.
But the thing is, I applied for Cronkite back in 2012, and they rejected me.
Oh, weird.
So yeah, I was like, wow, okay, so I'm in. So that just made me feel even better. But then I was in there, and I was freelancing for a really great publication in New Mexico, Source New Mexico.
Yeah, and really great publication.
Yeah,
they have some really good journalism there.
They do. And then Deb one day emailed me out of the blue. I met her like only once. I introduced myself to her, and that was it. And then she emailed me out of the blue and said, hey, we're hiring here. I think you'd be great. And I was like, oh, well, she took the time to email me and ask if I want to. I don't know how many other people she tried to recruit, but I was one of them, and she took the time. So I said, well, why don't I just apply? And I got the job.
Wow.
And I've been there ever since. That wasn't my plan. That was not my plan to go to Arizona Republic at all, because I never thought I would be a reporter that good enough to be at that, a 2018 Pulitzer winning publication.
Right.
So that's when I thought, like, people are watching me, people are seeing my stuff, and they see something that I don't see. So I really shouldn't be, really be doubting myself.
Yeah,
absolutely. Or my journalism.
Right, exactly. I mean, like I told you, like I've been reading your work for years, and you and I have covered many of the same issues: missing and murdered indigenous people, abandoned uranium mines on Navajo, COVID on Navajo Nation. So it's good to get these stories out there, especially with the perspectives that we have.
Yeah.
And, when I bring these stories to our editorial room, some of the people are just like, oh, I didn't realize that, or I didn't understand how this could be this, or the cultural impacts, or the way it impacts daily life on Navajo. So it's cool to be that voice, to bring that in there. But for me, I'm just Navajo. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many different tribes here in our states, in the Southwest, in the country, that, I wish I was well versed in many of them, but I mean, I feel like when something happens, they look at me to like, well, what do you think about this? I'm like, honestly, I don't know.
Yeah,
So do you feel like not pigeonholed or put into a corner with Native American coverage, but is that kind of where you feel like you are?
I feel like I'm just a Navajo reporter. Like, I cover Navajo. I tried covering outside of Navajo, but it's people saying, oh, just because you're automatically Native, just because automatically you're Navajo, you're going to be able to get in and get this news. And it's like, no, there's protocols. You have to earn trust, just like any other, place you're going to be at with different sources. And I don't know how, I've heard so many no's from so many different tribes within Arizona to not be interviewed. Even Hopi has said no to me a few times. I'm still trying to get in there and getting good with them. But, people think like, oh, she's, we're not like the thing they always say, we're not a monolith. So I can't just go into like the San Carlos Apache tribe and say, hey, give me your news.
Right. No, totally. I totally get that.
So that's the
Absolutely.
difficult part of my job.
Yeah, I know. I mean, for me, I've lived in Tucson. I've covered some of the issues down with some of the tribes out there. Just recently, a couple of weeks ago, I went out to Superior to talk to them about Oak Flats.
Oh, wow.
Oak Flat, yeah. So talking with them and the Apache tribe out there, how they're trying to save Oak Flat from it being mined. But yeah, getting these contacts is definitely, something that you have to work for.
Yeah, exactly. And then it really irks me when people that are not native reporters email me like, hey, do you have the contact for this person or this tribe?
Right.
And I was like, I probably don't, but if I did, I would give it to you.
Oh my gosh, my mom's last name is really common on the Navajo Nation, and then someone will come up to me. I won't say her last name, but like with some, because it's not the same as mine. But sometimes people come up to me like, "Oh, I know someone with that last name. Are they related? Is that person your uncle, aunt, or cousin?" I'm like, "No, it's just like Smith or Johnson or something." You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. So the ties run deep in our community, but there's so many different levels of it.
There is. Like Becenti. They're like, okay, which Becenti are you from? Are you from Crown Point Becenti, Standing Rock Becenti?
Right.
I was like, I'm just Crown Point, I think, because my dad's from Crown Point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, the Shones, I only know Shones to be like in the Pinon area, but I'm not sure if they're anywhere else.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I was also trying to think that too.
Yeah. I asked my dad a long time ago. He passed away about 10 years ago. And gosh, one of the things I asked him before he died was, where did our last name come from? And he had told me that his father had received it from the government, right? They came in and they had another Navajo name.
Yeah.
But they said that to them, it sounded like Shone. So they were like, all right, you guys are the Shones now or something like that.
Oh, wow.
So I know, super interesting.
You're probably like TSO. That's why you're doing it.
I don't know, right? I'm not sure. That'd be really, really, really strange.
Yeah.
But, I really like reading your work, and I see that are multimedia with your TikToks and,
goodness,
you're so where do you think things are heading in terms of like, the traditional format of newspaper journalism, which is what you wanted to be, like a journalist for the newspaper? Sometimes
I sit up at night thinking about that too.
Yeah.
It's really scary, especially when you hear, you go on Twitter and you see all the news, like this many people have been laid off from this publication. And, I came into the Arizona Republic at a very uneven time as well. And I was afraid of my own job at that point, of whether I was going to be laid off or furloughed. And I was like, well, I can always go back to Navajo Times, but now Navajo Times is shaky. So it's just really, it's up in the air, in my opinion. It's always up in the air. So that's why I try to take different platforms and show off I peddle my articles. So that's what I do with TikTok.
No, you do a really good job at it. I mean, I get to learn something from you on that. When it comes to the socials, I am like not trying to be on that, it's just a lot of headspace, but you do really well with that stuff.
Thank you. I don't know why I think last year I said to myself, I'm going to say yes to every speaking engagement or presentation that I'm asked to do. And then this year in 2024, I said, I'm just going to try TikTok and see what I do. Maybe I'll gain some more followers. Maybe I'll get people interested in Navajo news. And, maybe they'll click on my articles just by me explaining what I wrote about in a minute. It's only a minute, but it takes so long for me to do that 1 minute of like, this is what I'm writing about today. So TikTok has been very interesting. I don't know if I've gotten more people clicking on my articles or reading it, but it's out there. So
I know, it's like the powers that be are the ones who have that information. Yeah. I remember when I did my first episode for this show, I was like, I'm gonna pedal it out so much. I'm gonna do all these videos, and I did for the first one at least. I had all these sound effects. I had captions. I had bits and pieces. That took forever to do. Yes, yeah, I got 3 people engaged with it. So I'm like, what am I doing wrong?
Oh my goodness, I don't know what you mean. It's like, I don't know what hits or what they want and what they don't want, and it just, one thing I think is going to do good, it doesn't do good at all, and then sometimes I'll just throw it in there, and it does well, a lot of views. But I get all these views on certain videos, but I can't gain a following on TikTok, which is really frustrating.
If I post a photo of my pets, I get more likes with that than I do with this story that I worked weeks on, you know? I don't post photos of my children anymore. But whenever I did, of course, like there would be so many like comments and likes and all that stuff. But you know, as we go into this like social media world, those are things that I have to keep in mind too. You know, it's like privacy and, you know, just how it like takes up and consumes so many people's lives, and, which is cool if that's what you want to do. But for me, I've tried it. Maybe it's because I wasn't successful at it. You know, that's something that I'm kind of on the, I'll just do what I have to do.
Yeah, that's how I feel too sometimes. I do what I have to do. I'm not there all the time. I don't post all the time. I tried at the beginning. I was like, I'm going to post every single day. And then after a while, it just became tedious and tiresome. And I was like, this is silly. I'm not going to do that. I got to write.
Have you ever thought about broadcasting? I know that you've been interviewed several times, you know, for other publications. Like I saw the New Yorker in their profile of the Navajo Times covering the pandemic. And I think you were on NBC with Gotti Schwartz talking about something recently too. So obviously like you do well, you know, in front of a camera. Have you thought about pivoting yourself to kind of that role too?
I never thought of it. I've never really given a chance. I don't know. Maybe I would. Probably not. Because I just when you say that, I think of that Cronkite up there where they do on like I think it was like floor 5 where they or 6 where they do all their news stuff and how intimidating the whole the layout looks.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh no. So I was always wondering, like, how do you do your job and how are you because you don't ever see a Navajo really that many, you know, in broadcast journalism.
Yeah.
And that to me is just really like, it's a different new level. And like, I don't know, how do you feel when you do that stuff?
Well, you said you're shy. I grew out of the womb talking. Like I was just like always talking. In school, I was always getting into trouble for speaking, and in high school for one of the superlatives, I got most talkative, you know? So like, yeah, exactly. I was like, what? That's a weird one for me to get. I want to like most likely to be famous or something like that.
I'm insulted.
I know, but that's just kind of, I guess maybe under the stars I was born under, you know, it's like, not to like say anything, but like, you know, talking in front of people has always been something that I'm not shy to do. And so like talking in front of a camera when I first started doing it was a different thing because like, oh, I'm being recorded. I got to say something right. And I thought for the longest time that you have to have like this sort of image of this like reporter who just like talks and says things very articulately and, you know, it's a memorized script. And I tried that for a while when I was in school and also probably for my first job. And it just didn't sound right. And then I had so many people telling me, just be yourself. You know, people talk the way that they talk. And sometimes I don't speak grammatically correct, but that's how I think people relate to others, especially on television. You know, because you want to see someone who, you know, they tell me at least could be your neighbor. You know what I mean? It's like, I live in this community. These are the issues that I like to cover. And I want people to find me, I guess, relatable. You know what I mean? Especially being on the anchor desk. I mean, you're on for several hours at a time, especially when I'm here from 4:30 to 10 sometimes, you know, it's like, I mean, it's something that you don't take for granted. At least, I mean, I don't. You know, I know that, especially for me, this is my home. This is my hometown. The people who I grew up with, former teachers or, you know, my neighbors are watching. And it's like, I want to be like the best ambassador for the Valley and Arizona for everybody. You know what I mean? It's like reporting the good news, reporting the bad news. Just want you to know that, I mean, I care.
Yeah. I can relate to that feeling, definitely.
And I think it's a journalist thing, right? It's like, why do people care like me, you know? Exactly.
Yeah, so I can relate to that totally.
Yeah. Well, Arlyssa, thank you so much for stopping by. Last question for you. What's your favorite band?
The Beatles.
Oh, okay. All right. You know, I actually read that. I read that. Yeah.
I loved them since I was 10 years old. And I don't know, it's just, it's just a band that really spoke to me. Before them was the Monkees, but then the Beatles.
The Monkees. Yeah. Nice. All right. Thanks so much, Arlyssa.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to do it for this episode of Here Before, Here Now. Make sure you download, like, rate, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.
This is Here Before, Here Now, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.